we're going to start with the Kawhi Leonard cap situation that is going on, Andrew. I'm sure you've seen this. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts before we get into the specifics.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that this has been going around for a couple, like probably an extended period of time now. But I think it's funny the way that this is coming out. That the Kawhi Leonard situation is he's getting paid essentially under the table by his owner for extra money to stay under the salary cap. Um, I really don't see like that big of an issue with it. Besides like the legal side of it, I think that a lot of teams are doing this, and I think that any team or any person that's going to get mad at this is probably going to look themselves in the mirror in a couple of years, knowing that their potential star players could be responsible for the same thing.
Yeah, so there was obviously like a little bit of chatter on Twitter about all of these different players maybe potentially having taken pay cuts in the past and how this has definitely gone on before. And maybe it's kind of a bit of a unspoken rule, or unwritten rule rather, that some of these players do have these. But Kawhi Leonard potentially, along with Steve Ballmer, the Clippers owner, potentially circumvented the cap with a $28 million no-show marketing agreement. And I believe this was along the lines of like an environmental company. And a lot of people kind of outraged about it. I think also just in general, because Kawhi Leonard maybe potentially doesn't really show up for his work in general, playing for the Clippers, having a ton of injuries over the past handful of years. This past year, a lot better than recently, especially towards the end of the year. But that is, I think, what people are looking at. I kind of want to push back a little bit because I don't think so many people are just mad about nothing. I definitely think that there's a little bit of a, hey, now that we see this, Pablo Torre broke the news, now that we have all of these documents and potential cause for an investigation, why would we let something like this slide if we at least have it kind of more so written down on pieces of paper? It feels like it's opening up Pandora's box where a lot of teams at least hide it. Now maybe they don't have to. I feel like this is incorrect, right? Like this is still kind of getting around the salary cap. Just because everybody does it doesn't mean it's not wrong.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to like make that statement like and say that it's not something that shouldn't be addressed. I just think that like there's gonna be a lot of people that come out as holier than thou and like their franchise isn't doing this. I think that that's like a little bit dumb, but no, I definitely think that there should be repercussions for this, especially on the Clippers franchise specifically. Like if there's gonna be a way to do it, you're gonna have to not get caught. Like I feel like the saying is that like what is it, cheat, everyone cheats, but I don't know, like
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
exactly, there we go, some iteration of that. But yeah, no, you can't get caught though, so I think that there definitely has to be repercussions for this. I think it makes sense that there are, because like it obviously like skirting the salary cap, and you just can't do it. So I don't really see it as a good move on the Clippers' part as well, because they're essentially paying Kawhi Leonard to not show up to basketball games or to like his endorsement deals either. So I think it's just a funny story that the NBA season has kind of trickled in there.
And it was a contract that was void if he doesn't play for the Clippers anymore. So if he chose to leave in free agency or what have you, that contract would have been void, which I do believe is another thing that is incorrect. I don't know if you can do any of this. That's the kind of tricky part about the CBA. It's like, I don't think you can, but Jalen Brunson took a massive pay cut, and a lot of people were pointing at that and being like, I'm sure he's getting extra money in a different way. Now, there's nothing wrong with a CEO or of a company, or somebody who's friendly with the team or the team owner, probably saying, hey, look, you're going to get a little bit of extra money on the back end here with some of these endorsements. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. We get plenty of reports that players don't ever even touch the contract that they sign. They just touch the money that they get from endorsement deals. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it definitely feels like there's maybe something shady, especially because the company Aspiration went out of business. I believe they just pled guilty to crimes last week. I'm reading a Mark Cuban quote because he came out and said he was like, I'm Team Ballmer. As much as I wish they circumvented the salary cap, first, Steve isn't that dumb. If he did try to feed Kawhi Leonard money, knowing what was at stake for him personally and his team, do you think he would let the company go bankrupt? And he was saying all of these different things about, look, probably not, in a sense. He's not that dumb. He would have done this right and wouldn't got caught. I don't know. I still think something's fishy, something's up. The last time we saw a team actually found guilty in the NBA of circumventing the salary cap was the Minnesota Timberwolves with Joe Smith. I believe, I don't know if this was the final verdict, but I think they got 5 first-round picks taken away from them. And the largest fine of any time during that period. And then I think Joe Smith's contract was completely voided by the NBA. I don't think anything like that obviously is on the table, but maybe there's a big fine here or something like that. Maybe there's a second round pick taken away. I don't know, but it seems like, and I don't really subscribe to this, but if there's enough smoke here, maybe there's a fire.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I definitely don't think it'll get to the extent of what you're just talking about, like losing 5 years worth of draft picks or anything like that. But I definitely think that you just can't do it. So I definitely think that there will be some type of repercussions, and like you said, I don't think it'll be anything more than like a fine, maybe loss of a couple of draft picks. But I also like. I think what Mark Cuban makes sense. Mark Cuban is saying makes sense in theory. Like, why would you risk such a big such a big punishment on Kawhi Leonard, especially if he's not playing. But I mean, I don't know if you have money like that and you want to get away from heading into the salary cap, like just heading over the salary cap. I think it makes a little bit of sense too.
Yeah, money's no issue for Steve Ballmer. And also, shout out before we get out of here to Pablo Torre for breaking the story, even if there's not anything that comes of it. He's not a fake journalist, as Bill Simmons had potentially called him when he was reporting on the Bill Belichick Jordan situation that was going on and still is going on. But let's move into college football now. After a studded week one, we get a little bit lighter slate in week two. Michigan versus Oklahoma is the game of the week, potentially against two ranked teams here. First thoughts on maybe which way that you lean.
Yeah, so I think that Michigan wins this game just because the fact that Bryce Underwood did look good in his first game, and I think they had Sharon Moore back this week, which should be a big help. I mean, having your head coach on the sideline, actually coaching your team is always good. Obviously, he's facing like some sort of in-season suspension for a couple games, but he is on the sideline this week, and I think that gives them the best chance to win. I just like Michigan overall as the better team. I think that Oklahoma is one of those teams that will start in the preseason rankings, but they have a tough schedule. They obviously play in the SEC, and I think that they will start to continually go down. I think that Michigan's one of the best four teams in the Big Ten behind Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, and I think that they win this game.
So I think I respect Oklahoma. I'm interested in what they can be. They jumped up into the rankings here in week two, and I just think that if they can pressure Bryce Underwood and they can get after the quarterback, Brent Venables calling the defensive plays for them, I think could be really huge. And that could give them an opportunity to potentially slow down Michigan or whatever they might have you. I don't think that we know a ton about either of these teams just yet, just based off of week one. So I'm very interested to see what we're going to potentially learn. I believe Michigan is not favored in this game. I believe Oklahoma is favored. I think that Michigan will cover. I think the spread is 5.5, 6.5, depending on where you're looking. I think Michigan will cover, but I do actually think Oklahoma is going to come out and win this game. I totally think that Bryce Underwood is going to be a great quarterback here in college. Like, I'm fully bought into that, but maybe second game freshman year, maybe we see a hiccup here. I think Oklahoma is a good team and a bit of a team that has been forgotten, especially based off of what happened last year and them trying to, rebuild the program post Lincoln Riley. I think that they're a really good team, and I think if they could get to the quarterback, I think they'll win this game. But I think it'll be a close game. I think this will honestly have a good payout for a week two game.
Yeah, I think that there's like a lot of aspects to this game that there's a lot of moving parts, especially with Oklahoma being at home. I like to favor college football teams playing at home. I think that in in Power Four conference games or just interconference games, whatever you want to call it, like the home team wins about 70% of the time. So you want to lean Oklahoma there, but I've never been the biggest Brent Venables guy. And I think he could be a great defensive coordinator and even great defensive coach, but the SEC is so tough and you really don't want to win as many out of conference games as you could get. But Oklahoma, they played Illinois State last week. You really don't know what to take from that game. They won 35-3. Is there sure there's positives to take that from that game. You want to win every game you play, but I don't really know how to feel about this Oklahoma team, and I really do like Bryce Underwood, and I think they can get a dub in Norman.
Yeah, last week Oklahoma played Illinois State, and then last week Michigan played New Mexico. You're not going to know a ton about either of these teams, but you're leaning Michigan officially?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Yeah, I'll take Oklahoma. All right, let's move into Kalen DeBoer. Is he finished as the Alabama head coach? I think essentially are his days numbered? How hot is his hot seat? Because it's clearly hot right now. Are the boosters going to force him out after year 2? What are we thinking here right now after this loss to Florida State?
Yeah, so this is by far one of the topics that I was most excited about when we started marking stuff down. I think it's so funny, like watching like the Paul Feinbaum show or just anywhere you can find SEC like rants. There was one post on ESPN where this guy was just going off on Kalen DeBoer and saying that they were gonna go in with pitchforks and knives and just like protest like his whole existence essentially. And I think that we're getting pretty close to that being like a reality with Alabama football. Alabama football has been in such a good place for such an extended period of time. I saw a graphic on ESPN saying that this is the lowest they've been ranked in like 15 plus years, whatever the graphic is. They're just never this bad. They don't lose the first game of the season. I don't think they've lost their home opener or just opener in general since like 2001 or some crazy stat like that. They're not used to this, and it is kind of like refreshing to see as a college football fan of any other team, because no team is that good for that long. And obviously Nick Saban had so much to do with that. And now they're facing like just what feels like to be a regular team. But I mean, how hot is Kalen DeBoer's seat? If he doesn't put together, if they don't make the playoff, he could be on the way out, which
Wow.
is crazy to say because they already have one loss going into a tough SEC schedule.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the SEC schedule. I'll get to that in a second. First off, never follow a legend in any sort of career. I hate to be like running away from a challenge. I sound like the opposite of Damian Lillard here, but I almost feel like it's impossible shoes to fill.
Well, we saw
And
how good that worked out for Dame.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's impossible shoes to fill, and it's just making the playoff is a just in my opinion, with the way that this team looks right now. I know they started 8, now they're all the way down to 21 in the rankings, but it just almost feels like that was too high of an expectation going into this year. Obviously, they shouldn't have lost to Florida State just based off of the guys that they had. Florida State, I think, is going to be obviously improved from 2-10 last year, but this team is still better than that Florida State team, you would think, on paper. Obviously, we saw them play on the field, so not so much. But the expectations, I think, were a little bit too high for a legend, and it takes time to put your own imprint on a program. And I definitely think 2 years is just not enough. And looking at the schedule the rest of the way, it might be too far-fetched for this team to make the playoffs, especially already with that Florida State loss. They got Georgia in a few weeks. I don't even want to skip over the Wisconsin game because of what just happened to Florida State. I think they're going to be awake for Vanderbilt, but that's there too. Mizzou at some point maybe potentially could be ranked. I'd have to take a look at their schedule before they play them. Then you got where it really gets tough. Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU. We just talked about Oklahoma. I don't think that Oklahoma is going to be ranked potentially by that point, but I'd have to take a look at their schedule as well. Then they end Eastern Illinois, Auburn. I mean, am I penciling in losses for Alabama at this point? I don't know if I'm going down with the ship. It feels unusual to talk college football and not have Alabama at least be penciled in for some good wins over some decent SEC teams. But I'm thinking South Carolina, Tennessee, LSU. That is maybe potentially when this will get really loud. If that stretch is 0-3 going into Oklahoma, I mean, my goodness, that could be 4 losses there. I think I see at worst this team could be 7-5. I think that could draw some concern. But at the end of the day, you need a little bit of time to build the program. And with the transfer portal, NIL, it sounds like a broken record. Everybody in college football just talks about how it's an ever-changing landscape, but it is. And to build your program, even at Alabama, it's going to maybe take at least 2 years.
Yeah, but I just don't think that a lot of people are going to give him that time, especially given the fact that he starts off his head coaching career, not inheriting, but like obviously he helped with this recruiting class. But then he gets the number 2 recruiting class in the nation, right? Ryan Williams is a part of that recruiting class, and there's just a bunch of other 5 or 4 stars a part of that class. And then this past year, in his full first year of recruiting, he had the number 4 class. So like, these are players that can get it done. And then where, if they're not getting it done on the field, where are they looking to? It's obviously the head coach. So it is unfortunate that he followed up such a legend in Nick Saban, and it was just gonna be tough to fill his shoes, like in any means, but like you got to make the playoff. And especially with the 12-team playoff this year, or like not this year, but the last couple of years, it's tough to look at Alabama and say that they're not going to be in it. So I don't know. Like I think the floor, like you mentioned, is definitely like could be 5 losses. They have a ton of tough games. Obviously, like you mentioned, Georgia on the road, South Carolina also on the road. They get LSU, but they're the number 3 team in the nation right now, and that's at home. But still, the SEC is always going to be tough, and I think that like they might have to look to like not redshirt freshman, true freshman Keelan Russell for like some motivation, because Ty Simpson was unfortunately uninspiring in his first start as an Alabama quarterback, and Keelan Russell was not only the number 2 quarterback in the nation, but the number 2 player in the nation. So do they look there at some point during the season if things aren't going right? They might have to.
If there wasn't so much noise too about how he's running the program, I feel like the perspective would be a little bit different, because I know that there's a lot of different viral posts going around on social media about maybe how he's conducting mental health within the program. And then, I think Caden Proctor had his phone on him when in warmups. He like had it on in his hand. That like there's different stuff that people are looking at where it's like this wouldn't have flown under Nick Saban, and that's where I get to the expectations of just maybe he's moving this program into a way that they can win, but with these younger players. And Nick Saban, you just don't challenge Nick Saban, as a player or anything like that. But he was even able to kind of move a little bit into the direction that college football was moving. And I think Kalen DeBoer potentially kind of took a further step, but they're losing. So a lot of people are taking a look at that, and it brings a different perspective with that. I know I'm speaking more in generalities, but there's something to that, I think, as well, where people don't have an issue with the way that you're running the program if you're getting wins. And then obviously if you're losing or you lose your opening game, people have an issue. I think I saw a stat where Nick Saban only had 4 losses to unranked teams during his time there, and now they already have 4 losses to unranked teams under Kalen DeBoer. If this gets cleaned up as the season goes on, I think the chatter will die down.
Yeah, so I actually have that stat right in front of me. It's from 2007 to 2023. Alabama was 119-1 against unranked teams, and from 2024 to 2025, Kalen DeBoer 6-4. So it's also like, as an Alabama fan, you like pencil in a lot of wins, right? So like you're just not supposed to lose some of these games, and to an unranked like team coming off 2 wins, obviously it is FCU. They have rebuilt a lot. They got a new quarterback. They essentially rebuilt their whole offense. So instead of DJU, they have somebody that's actually viable. But still, like, you're looking at FSU, you're coming in as 2 touchdown favorites. You're saying you're going to win that game, and when you don't, that raised a lot of questions, because FSU was like maybe the 6th hardest team on that schedule this year. So yeah, it's just unfortunate for Kalen DeBoer that he stepped into such a big role, and it's unfortunate that the way he was coming off of his time at Washington too, because he had a couple great years at Washington. He led them to the national championship. He immediately comes off that, gets the Alabama job, and the shoes are just very big to fill.
I'd have to take a look. I'm guessing Kalen DeBoer was never a Saban assistant coach or a disciple, but I know that there's probably going to be a lot of people, boosters maybe specifically, be like, we want to hire in-house. I mean, it just kind of sucks when you see a ton of these different coaches all around being from the Nick Saban coaching tree, and then having not brought in one of them, or not got the chance to bring in one of them. You see them all succeeding at other programs. Maybe that stat's a little bit misleading, right? Because he probably had, Nick Saban did the 4 losses within his first 2 years. Like, maybe there is a sense of when this starts rolling, maybe he does have a couple more losses to unranked teams. Obviously, I know that sucks to hear for Alabama fans, but maybe there is a success path if it does happen, where those 4, 5, 6 losses to unranked teams happen in the first 2 years, and he doesn't have another one for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Like, that is maybe potentially how it happens. I'm not saying it's a completely misleading stat, because it's definitely cause for alarm, but that could be something that I think is worth taking an extra nuanced look at.
Yeah, I just don't even know if he has those 5+ years that we're talking about here, because we'll see how the end of the season goes. But I think that if it does hit the floor of 7-5, it could get really bad. Like, I know that, like, my general statement before was him not making the playoff. I think that I can maybe relax on that a little bit. Like, I don't know that he gets fired if they miss the playoff, but if they're just barely making a bowl game as Alabama football, it could look pretty bleak for Kalen DeBoer.
7-5 is rough. I think
Yeah.
8 wins is necessary here, and then regroup next year.
It also depends on who you lose to at this point too, right? Because if you lose 4 games, but Georgia is a win at Georgia, then that makes the season look a little bit different. Or if you can get a South Carolina win away, that looks a little bit different. Or even LSU at home. But if those losses, like they play Vanderbilt again, if that happens 2 years in a row, that's
I think you need a loss later in the schedule for that to really be in the minds of a lot of people. And then for them to just point at the game and say, that's the Alabama that we know. If
mhm.
there's a game like that, I think that can really help his case, because maybe we haven't seen that just yet. But let's move into Arch Manning as we just continue to make conclusions after week 1. What if a 6-star last name, 3-star prospect? You've seen it all through the first about week now since this loss to Ohio State. Is there cause for concern for Arch Manning? Will he not pan out? What's your thoughts?
Okay, I'm definitely not going as hot here as the Kalen DeBoer situation. I think that Arch Manning is going to be fine. I genuinely think that people are going to start like. I think that the graphics and everything that came out and all the hate that he was getting online was just pent up stuff from people who already wanted him to fail or already didn't think he was a great prospect. I I understand that he was skipping some throws. I understand that he missed a couple throws, and it wasn't a great start by any means. I'm not going to go ahead and say that Arch Manning like was just as good as advertised. Like if you have eyeballs, like he obviously wasn't. But like, can he be? I think he can. He played one of, if not the best defense in all of college football, and probably the best secondary in college football. Obviously, he's throwing to Caleb Downs. There's not going to be. It's not like his wide receivers were open on every single play and he was just missing them. He had to scramble and make time for himself in the pocket, and then there just weren't people open downfield, which is the major problem. I think that in any other situation, I think that he gets it done a little bit more. And even so, it was a 1 touchdown game. You could say that like Ohio State took their foot off the gas pedal or whatever you want to say. Texas defense held them up. But I think that with that Texas system, he's built up for success, and he unfortunately doesn't have the greatest wide receiver core of all time, but I think that he has a much better start in week 2. And going up against the defending champion, should have been probably the number 2 team in the nation away as your first game ever in college football, or not first start as like the starting quarterback of a major school. It's tough for anybody, and I don't think that he's gonna be nearly as bad as some people are like saying he's going to be.
I'm not a big believer in the FCS tune-up games. I hate it. I don't like it for these top-tier programs, especially. But if there was ever a time for one, it would be now. And then it would have been before this Ohio State game. We're talking about 2 people in almost impossible positions. Kalen DeBoer, apparently people thought he was going to be the next Nick Saban. I digress. We just talked about that. I get it. But Arch Manning going against like you just said, a former head coach and defensive coordinator for Ohio State, the defending national champions, Mr. Born on third base, but yes, he's actually a really good coach, Ryan Day. Caleb Downs in the secondary, his receivers can't get open. The run game really isn't even there either. And then the other starting quarterback for Ohio State has Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Like, he's at least got something. Arch Manning, yes, the cards maybe have never been stacked against him in his life at this point. But in this game, we have swung the pendulum the complete opposite way, and you're on the road. I think everybody needs to take a deep breath. I don't know what else we maybe potentially expected. I thought he was going to be a tad bit better, and I did think to an extent that Texas was going to be able to compete a little bit more than they did, but they were still in this game with a little sliver of hope late. I got to give it more time. I got to give it more time. There's some stuff he definitely needs to clean up. He missed some throws. He missed the first throw of the game. But, I mean, my goodness, this was the tallest order, the tallest ask I've seen in a while for the first time official starting quarterback. And yes, his last name is Manning. Yes, we're thinking he's going to be the first overall pick in an NFL Hall of Famer. But that was even pump the brakes, right? that was even too much. And this game, the expectations going in, it was just, there was just no way. It was impossible.
Yeah, and I think the way this game was pumped up with the 1 versus 3 matchup, obviously the defending national champions, it was just all going to be so much. And I think that we kind of alluded to that when we did our preview, that like, don't expect anything too crazy. Like, I don't know if we said those exact words like directly, but like we were debating who's going to have the better game between Julian Sane and Arch Manning, even though one is clearly the more hype prospect. It's like, it was that matchup because of the fact that Arch Manning is going against, like, on the road, the best defense coached by an ex-NFL head coach. Like, there's just so many factors that go into it, and it wasn't just a regular NFL football game. Like, we were talking about it, like, a little bit, like, in just like call we had. Like, this could genuinely be like easy. Like, he probably will have easier NFL like football games against like easier NFL. Like, that secondary is genuinely going to be filled with at least one guaranteed top 10 pick, and then further than that, probably a second one. So I think that everybody who's jumping on this Arch hate train is, by the end of the season, will probably come back down to earth, because I just don't see a world in which he's just bad or this bad the whole entire season. And if he's not as good as advertised, that could happen. Obviously, he was a 5-star number 1 overall recruit coming out of high school. So is it possible that he doesn't live up to that? Sure. Is it possible that he doesn't live up to his last name? Sure. But I think that like everybody who's like preying on his downfall and is like just saying that he's like finished after like game 1, or maybe not even going that far, but everybody's going to have to pump the brakes pretty soon here.
Yeah, dare I say, a little bit of confirmation bias kind of rose up in some of the talks. Like, you can kind of say your piece about maybe what kind of competition he had in high school, and, you know, maybe why are we crowning this guy? But I'm seeing a lot of, hey, he was behind a 7th round pick. Hey, he's not going to be any good, or like this stuff like that. Like, pump the brakes. And I'm glad that you mentioned the NFL thing, because obviously we had talked about that off camera, and it was just, if things do end up working out, he'll say, or at least he'll think it one day and look back on this game and be like, you know what? Yeah, I've played like the Jets a few times in my career in the NFL, and that felt a little easier than this matchup. Like, I think that's a real thing. This was an impossible set of circumstances. And Texas, I think it's the same thing. We'll go week to week. Sports media is in an awful place right now with you have to have a reaction. You have to have a major opinion or a hot take on every single game. And it's just, maybe by week 4, Texas is 3-1. I'd have to take a look at their schedule, and Arch Manning's got it together. The offense is humming, and it just feels like, hey, they're ready for a rematch. They're ready to go to get back at it. They're in prime position to make the SEC championship game and, you know, make the playoffs. This is a non-conference loss too, so just from like the standings perspective, it's not like the end of the world.
And it feels like, based off the way Texas played against the number 1 team in the nation now, that'll probably be more likely than not, right? Like, if they're gonna put up a 1-score game away against what is now the number 1 team of the nation, I don't see them losing too many games in this future. I don't know exactly what the Texas schedule looks like either, but still, like, it will be more likely than not that Arch Manning will get his stuff together and that they'll end up winning like a whole bunch of games and probably very easily be in the college football playoff, which is expected, but still, like, this week 1, like, just going crazy on Arch Manning, I think was always going to happen just because of like who he is and what his last name is, but it's just so unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think we've given enough credit to the Ohio State defense, because we've said like how monumental of a task it is to kind of go up against them, at least on the road, especially in your first start. But that's a really, really talented defense. I'll just move to the Texas fan perspective here too, because obviously we were saying that it looks like they'll be in prime position if they can get things together really quickly here to have a very, very productive season, make the playoffs. If you're looking at that defense, you've got to be ecstatic. That Texas defense was amazing. Like that the other side of the ball was also really great for them. And I think that definitely should be recognized as well. The offense didn't play well, but that was it. The Texas defense looked like one of the best in the country as well, just on the other side. It was a great defensive game. A lot of people were disappointed 14-7, but sometimes you get good defensive battles, and, you know, people are just going to say whatever they want, especially because the LSU Clemson game was more of a defensive slugfest as well. Not a ton of scoring. So a lot of people were disappointed, but I digress from that point as well. Before the game, I know we were talking about who would play better, Julian Sand and Arch Manning. I wanted to comment on that before we got out of here too. And it was just the closer that the game got to be, the closer we got to the game, the more I thought that both of these guys were not going to play very, very well. They weren't going to load the stat sheet. It was just about who makes the less mistakes, who could get the ball out to their playmakers more, and who can make a play as far as the receivers are concerned. And I thought Arch Manning was going to play better than Julian Sayin, but I didn't think that the stats would show it. Obviously, that was wrong, but still, I didn't think both of these guys were going to play well. An impossible task. All right, let's move into the Miami Hurricanes. They got a huge win over Notre Dame at home. They look pretty good right now. They just shot up the rankings, going from number 10 to number 5, big jump. What are we thinking about the Miami Hurricanes? Are they the best team in the ACC, making the playoffs? You got a big smile on your face.
Yeah. So if you're new here, I am from Miami. I am actually currently sitting about 3 minutes away from the Hard Rock Stadium here. And it is a good feeling, right? Like
that
winning
number,
in week,
that minutes number gets closer every time we talk too.
yeah. I just winning in week 1 is always a great feeling, right? Getting a top 10 win in week 1 is an even better feeling. And beating Notre Dame is possibly the best feeling as a Miami Hurricanes fan. I just have so much to like talk about here. Carson Beck, where do we even start with him? He was beautiful in the first half. The second half, the play calling was absolutely atrocious. I thought like there were so many 3 and outs, and it was just an unfortunate set of circumstances. Felt like we let Notre Dame come back in that game, which obviously they did on their own merit, and they had CJ Carr had a couple great drives to like lead them back into that game. But like it was just so conservative in the second half, which is a little bit concerning because you've seen that against like Georgia Tech in the past, losing that game, the Syracuse game. Like it wasn't a matter of being conservative and as much as it was just losing that football game, which was so tragic to like watch. But I think that there's so much good with this Miami Hurricanes like team in general. Do I think that they are national championship contenders? Yes. Do I think that they will win the national championship? Let's hold off. I obviously they're only the number 5 team in the nation. There's a bunch of teams ahead of them that are quite good. Obviously, Ohio State, Penn State, just the laundry list goes on. LSU, but that defense was also so much improved, which is what you want to see as a Miami Hurricanes fan, right? You look at where the struggles were last year, and obviously everyone knows that we had Cam Ward. They had the number 1 offense in the nation. Cam Ward broke a bunch of records. The rushing offense was also there. It was all about the defense. The defense couldn't hold a candle to a baby. Like they were literally like, and that is the first time I've ever used that quote, but like you understand what I'm trying to say. Like it was, especially in that secondary, there was so much to clean up, and it looks like they did a good job. They were reading like concepts correctly, like when they jumped that route, and there was like a scorpion kick that ended up turning into a Ruben Bain interception. Ruben Bain lived up to the hype. He was very good in week 1. And just in general, that defense played like they should have. And that defense probably plays better if the offense gives them less time on the field in the second half. Like I could easily see that defense not having given up as many points as they did if they weren't on the field so often in the second half. But they did what they needed to do. And I think with that defense and Carson Beck at the helm, this can genuinely be a really scary team. And I personally think they're the best team in the ACC. Obviously, Clemson is right there, and FSU is looking good this year. But I think that for my money, Miami's the best team in the ACC right now.
I think just based off of the general expectations going in, because I thought Miami was going to be good too, but just based off of the general expectations going in, they were probably the team I was most impressed with over the weekend. And first, I'll say this about Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a good team. With CJ Carr also had a heck of a debut challenge for him, going on the road, Hard Rock Stadium, inclement weather, maybe not the receivers that you would have at some other schools. Like the receivers are pretty good for Notre Dame, but they're nothing like at the top end of stuff. He played well. There was points in the game where I wanted them to open it up more for CJ Carr potentially, and it just felt like they didn't really do it. They didn't get the ball enough to Jeremiah Love, yada, yada, yada. Most of that was caused by Miami's defense. And I think that's why I was so impressed. There was one busted coverage all game. Mohamed Tor, the transfer linebacker from Rutgers, who will be very good for them this season, and he was good for every play during that game except for that one play. that was what was so impressive about this game, I think, was that this defense was actually competent. Imagine if this defense was paired with Cam Ward's offense last year. I mean, my goodness, that would have been a playoff team, probably would have won a playoff game. That was really great to see. They stopped Notre Dame from running the ball. They were clearly more effective in the trenches. Ruben Bain, as you mentioned, did show up. He was all that was advertised. Akeem Mesidor was also really good for them. They just felt like they also had a handle on the Notre Dame receivers outside of the screen passes in the opening drive and a couple other good passes throughout the game from CJ Carr, kind of, buying a little bit of time. That secondary won the matchup against the Notre Dame receivers. All levels, I thought it was really impressive. And then, as you mentioned, the only point of concern, which I know a lot of people want to get on Mario Cristobal about clock management, late game play calling, all of this stuff. But it was the play calling, as they kind of felt like they were playing not to lose at a certain point in the game, and they were trying to run out the clock. Now, Notre Dame did kind of run out of time, right? Like, obviously Miami was able to go down and get the field goal, but, and they kind of won the game that way. But Notre Dame did, in a sense, run out of time. I don't think they would have scored on that drive, obviously, because they ended with back-to-back sacks. But in a sense, they did run out the clock on Notre Dame a little bit. So it ended up working out, and it didn't cost them the game. But that was really bad. And that's where we saw some of the flaws from this Miami team. And I think that is something that is easily fixable, especially in a competitive game, right? Like, it was just that they were up 24-14. They were up 21-7, and they took their foot off the gas, and that is where it opened it up. I feel like if that's your issue, I feel like that's a very easily fixable issue for this Miami Hurricanes team. And then, I'll give it back to you in a second, because I know I've been talking for a minute. But Carson Beck was great. Shout out CJ Daniels. Bailed him out of the one pass that looked like last year Carson Beck, and that's what it's all about. You got good receivers. The receivers look great for Miami. I mean, they were replacing their top 6 pass catchers, and it looked like they had very good players on the outside, especially Malachi Toney, who deserves a mention. I can't believe we've talked this much and haven't mentioned him just yet, but there you go.
Yeah, so I will say, like, clock management is definitely an issue with Mario Cristobal, and it was scary towards the end of the second or first half as well, when it looked like they weren't going to be able to get maybe even a field goal going into the end of the first half, just because of the fact that they weren't calling their timeouts. It was so confusing, and like, they let 20 seconds run off the play clock or the game clock before using one of their timeouts going into one of the final plays of that drive. It ended up being bailed out by CJ Daniels and Carson Beck, like you mentioned. But I think Malachi Toney definitely deserves a mention at the start of this, like what we're going to say next, because he was one of, if not the best player on that field, at least on the offensive side of the ball. I think that Carson Beck, it was raining. I want to also say that, like, it wasn't great conditions here. But Malachi Toney, like, in his first game ever in college, was better than advertised. He's like an American Heritage product. I think that we were both high on him coming into this game, and maybe not this high though. Like, I want to say that I thought he was going to have a good season, but 6 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown, like, that was much better than anybody could have anticipated. And I think that much better than Notre Dame would have anticipated, because by the second half, they had their best cover corner on him, and one of the best cover corners in the nation. So I think that, just like looking up and down this roster, it's also like worth a note that if you don't watch Miami football, Josiah Trader is one of the returners who was supposed to have a really good season this year at receiver, and he didn't have a catch in this game. So like, this Miami wide receiving core could even get better than what we saw. Obviously, CJ Daniels, one-handed catch. Keelan Marion is also supposed to be really good this year, and Malachi Toney plus Josiah Trader. That is a very good first 4. And then Elijah Lofton is also in there. And then running backs, Jamar Brown, Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, all 3 of them are supposed to be pretty decent running backs. The offensive line has a top 5 pick on it. In general, it definitely looks good for Miami. I don't want to run away and say that this is like, I just don't want to go too far, because I've seen so much from Miami in recent years. And besides last year, we didn't have a 10-win season in the last decade besides 2017. So I want to pump the brakes on myself a little bit here, because I don't know how the season is necessarily going to go, but it did look really good after week 1. And I'm excited to watch Miami football again.
With all due respect to Florida State, Pitt, Louisville, SMU, I think I'm ready right now to punch in my ticket for Miami Clemson ACC championship game. Winner of that, depending on what their records are, I think is going to go into the. I mean, obviously, winner of that goes into the playoffs, but I definitely think maybe both go into the playoffs. But I definitely am ready for that game to really get a gauge on how good these teams are, and we're gonna have to wait to the very end. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of different games going on, but I'm ready to punch my ticket that will be the ACC championship game. I'm glad that you mentioned the running back room. The running back room for Miami is super underrated. I love Jamar Brown. I think he's a great player. Like, I think he is elite. And Mark Fletcher Jr. is really good too. I think they got two really good running backs. Jordan Lyle obviously deserved to mention. They controlled the trenches against Notre Dame. Like no notes outside, on the offensive and defensive lines. They controlled the will of that game. And that's such a great sign because I feel like if you control the will of the game against a team like, a middling team, like maybe SMU in your conference, that's one thing. But to do it against Notre Dame, huge, huge stuff. All right, let's move into the NFL. We got the NFL starting up tonight at the time of this recording. So we're going to make some quick picks, and then we're also going to do a more likely game here. Let's pick every NFL game for week 1, starting with Cowboys at Eagles.
Give me the Eagles.
Give me the Eagles too. Chiefs versus Chargers.
Chiefs.
Give me the Chiefs too. Bucks at Falcons.
Give me the Falcons in this one.
I'm going to take the Bucks here. Bengals at Browns.
I take the Bengals.
Bengals here too. Dolphins at Colts.
Dolphins.
Dolphins for me too. Panthers at Jags.
Panthers at Jags. I'll take the Panthers.
I'll take the Panthers too. Raiders at Pats.
Raiders at Pats. I'll take the Raiders.
Give me the Patriots. Is that our first disagreement?
No, we've had a couple.
Bucks at Falcons, I think, right? And then did you take the Chargers?
I did take. I took the Chiefs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe just
that one.
Oh, just okay. Yeah.
Just the two now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cardinals at Saints.
I'll take the Cardinals.
Give me the Cardinals too. Steelers at Jets.
Steelers. I don't trust Justin Fields.
Steelers as well. Giants at Commanders.
Take the Commanders.
I'll take the Commanders as well. Titans at Broncos.
Broncos.
Give me the Titans. I think Cam Ward will win his first game. Yeah. 49ers at Seahawks.
I'll take the 49ers.
I'll take the Seahawks. Lions at Packers.
I'll take the Lions.
I'll take the Packers. Texans at Rams.
I'll take the Texans.
I'll take the Texans as well. Ravens at Bills.
I'll take the Bills.
I'll take the Bills. Vikings at Bears.
I'll take the Bears. The Bears.
Give me the Bears too. All right. I thought you were kind of going chalk. You still kind of went chalk, especially.
No, I didn't.
It's any given Sunday.
No, I let me count this off. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have at least 6 underdogs in a 16 games. Like, I'm not just gonna go all all. God, give me a break.
I know. Yeah, I'd have to take a look at it. I might have like 9 underdogs now at that point if you had.
Yeah, hey, you look
like because I know we deviated a little bit because I took the Titans, Seahawks, and Packers. That 4 o'clock window on Sunday might kill me here.
I had the first underdog we took, the Falcons, bro.
Yeah, that's fair. And I was going through it so quickly, I didn't register if he actually had the Falcons or not. So that was with the trip up with the Cardinals at the Saints game. All right, let's go with the more likely to game for the NFL. More likely, Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl or Eagles make it to the Super Bowl?
I think it's more likely that the Eagles make it back to the Super Bowl this year. I think that the NFC still leaves something to be desired. Obviously, there are great teams in there, but I think that the AFC just has so many of them. You obviously look at the Bills, you look at the Bengals who didn't even make the playoffs last year, you look at the Ravens. I think that there's a hard path for the Chiefs to get there. And this would also be, 5 straight for them if they did make it. So at some point, something's got to give. I think that this is the year that, and like every other year, I've said that like just going off vibes. Like, I think that the Chiefs are going to make it back to the Super Bowl. I think this is the year where somebody else comes in and says, not this year for the Chiefs.
I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah.
That's my feeling on that. More likely to get their first ring, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen?
going off that, I think that Josh Allen gets his first ring this year and comes out of the AFC and beats whoever comes out of the NFC. Obviously, in that last scenario, it would have been the Eagles. But I think that Josh Allen, it's now or never for him, right? It feels like the AFC's window is like closing on that kind of set of quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen are kind of all like, they're all just kind of grouped together, right? I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to make a couple more Super Bowls in his career. So if it's going to be any year, I think that it's going to be this year. And I think that Josh Allen is going to be the guy to get it done. There's so much like talk about him not getting it done these last couple of years. And obviously Lamar's faced that too. But I think that Josh Allen gets it done this year.
I think if I had to choose between those two, I think I would take Josh Allen and the Bills. But obviously, like I said, I think the Chiefs are winning it all. All right, more likely to start more games, Russell Wilson or Joe Flacco?
I think that Russell Wilson makes it through the whole season. And if not the whole season, I think he makes it through a vast majority of these games. I don't think that he wasn't that bad last year. And obviously the Broncos situation was absolutely horrendous. But like still, I don't know. I think I still have some belief in Russell Wilson. That deep ball looks pretty good in preseason, and I don't know. I think that the Browns are definitely going to want to see what they have behind Joe Flacco because he's obviously not their future. He's 40 years old. So Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, see what they've got. Like maybe halfway through the season, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after that.
Yeah, statistically, Russell Wilson wasn't that bad last year or his last year with the Broncos. I just don't think he's got the support. I think he had 26 touchdowns and 8 picks his second year with the Broncos. But
don't even throw the Broncos year in there.
That was
absolutely, it was terrible.
I'm getting to a point here, and it's that he doesn't have those teams with him now. He's on the Giants, and they got some good weapons on offense. But I think I give both of these guys about 4 games this season until they get replaced. Start more games. Maybe they turn back around week 10, week 11, and they end up being the starter again. But I think both of these guys, neither of them will make it through the full season. I think if I had to say more likely to start more games, I think the Joe Flacco scenario is I think the Browns quarterback room will allow Joe Flacco a scenario where he starts more games.
I'll put $100 on Russell Wilson, like playing more than just week 4. Like he'll start going into week 5.
I think that they're going to want to see Jackson Dart out there on the field. Like I think that the Giants, I think situation is a little bit more different than the Browns. I think obviously at a certain point, they're going to want to see Shedeur Sanders and I guess Dylan Gabriel. I'm so low on Dylan Gabriel, but I think they're going to want to see him eventually this year. I think the Giants want to see Jackson Dart like fairly quickly. I think they're ready to see what they've got in him. And I just think at a certain point, Russell Wilson, they already know, just in the same vein as Joe Flacco, but they're just going to go try to give the reins to Jackson Dart.
I could see a Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith situation with the Jackson Dart scenario and Russell Wilson.
No, that's fair. All right. Well, we've talked a lot. We talked the NBA, college football, and the NFL, but we haven't made our Super Bowl picks just yet before we get out of here. So we have to do it. I have to put you on the spot. I'll go first. I'm going to say Chiefs, Packers.
Ooh.
Chiefs, Packers, and I think the Chiefs win. I'd say the Chiefs win this game 31-23.
Oh my gosh, you're going to score. Yeah. That'd be so insane if you just called it exactly. I will go Bills, Commanders. No, Bills 49ers. Sorry.
Bills 49ers. Okay. Got a final score?
31-27 Bills.
All right. Good Super Bowl, hopefully. I guess we've covered it all. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Big Little Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That's Andrew Greig. We'll see you guys next time.